The airline gate agent's words cut through the airport like a knife. "Sir, you cannot board with that." Colonel David Carter stood in his dress blue's hand resting on the flag-draped casket beside him. In that moment, an entire terminal fell silent. What happened next would shake the aviation industry to its core and remind America what honor truly means. This is the story of one soldier's final journey home and the corporate mistake that turned a nation's grief into righteous fury. Stay with me until the end and drop a comment about where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this soldier's story has traveled. Colonel David Carter had seen death before. 23 years in the United States Army had shown him its many faces, sudden and violent in Fallujah, slow and agonizing in field hospitals, peaceful in veterans' homes. But standing in the cargo hold of the military transport at Dover Air Force Base at 4:47 a.m., on a bitter February morning, staring at the aluminum transfer case that held Private First Class Jason Reynolds, death felt different, personal, sacred. "Colonel Carter." The loadmaster's voice barely registered above the whine of hydraulics as they prepared to move the casket. "We're ready for the transfer, sir." Carter nodded his breath, forming small clouds in the frigid air. Jason Reynolds was 19 years old. 19. The same age Carter's own son would be next month. The boy, because that's what he was, really just a boy, had been killed by an IED outside Kabul 4 days ago. His squad leader's report had been brief but haunting. Reynolds had spotted the device first, pushed 2 of his squad mates to safety. The explosion took him instantly. "Careful with him," Carter said quietly, though he knew the honor guard needed no reminder. These men handled fallen heroes with a reverence that bordered on religious. They moved in perfect synchronization, their white gloves stark against their dark uniforms, transferring Reynolds from military custody to Carter's care. The paperwork had been processed 3 days ago. Carter had volunteered immediately when the request came through his office at Fort Campbell. Reynolds had no military family to escort him home. His father had died when he was 12. His mother worked 2 jobs in Detroit. The kid had listed his high school football coach as his emergency contact. Someone needed to bring him home, and Carter had made it his personal mission. "Sir, the commercial flight leaves from Cincinnati at 0900. His aide Lieutenant Sarah Kim had briefed him. "American Airlines Flight 447 to Detroit. I've confirmed everything with their military liaison office. They're aware of the escort protocol." Carter had done this twice before, both times without incident. Airlines typically bent over backward to accommodate military escorts and fallen soldiers. It was basic decency corporate policy and, frankly, good PR. The transfer case would be loaded into the cargo hold with military precision. Carter would board first, sit in first class, upgraded as a courtesy, and escort Reynolds to his final rest. But something felt different this morning. Maybe it was the news cycle. Another scandal about airline passenger treatment had gone viral the week before. Maybe it was the weather. A massive storm system was causing delays across the Midwest. Or maybe it was just that feeling Carter got, sometimes honed by years in combat zones, that told him to stay alert. The drive from Dover to Cincinnati took 6 hours. Carter rode in the hearse with Reynolds refusing the comfortable SUV that had been offered. He spent the time reading the young soldier's file, memorizing details he'd share with the grieving mother. Reynolds had been a good soldier, not exceptional, but solid, reliable. His squad leader wrote that he was the guy who always volunteered for the shit duties, always shared his care packages, always had a joke ready when morale was low. Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport appeared through the morning haze at 8:15 a.m. Carter watched as the honor guard transferred Reynolds to airline custody, each movement precise and respectful. The ground crew stood at attention. Some were veterans, Carter could tell by their bearing. One older man, wearing a Vietnam veteran cap, saluted. Carter entered the terminal through the employee entrance, his dress blues immaculate, his shoes polished to a mirror finish. The green beret sat perfectly on his head, his chest displaying rows of ribbons that told the story of a career spent in harm's way, Bronze Star Purple Heart Combat Infantryman badge, and dozens more. The terminal was packed. Weather delays had created a perfect storm of frustrated travelers. Children cried, business people barked into phones, families clustered around charging stations like moths to flames. Carter moved through them like a ship through water, the crowds parting instinctively at the sight of his uniform. He reached Gate B12 at 8:35 a.m., 25 minutes before boarding. The gate agent, a woman in her 30s with perfectly styled blonde hair and a name tag reading Melissa, looked up from her computer with a practiced smile that froze when she saw him. "Good morning, ma'am," Carter said, producing his documentation. "Colonel David Carter. I'm the military escort for Private First Class Jason Reynolds. He's in your cargo hold." Melissa's fingers flew across her keyboard. Her expression shifted confusion, then something else. Concern. Colonel, could you wait just one moment? I need to speak with my supervisor." Carter felt the first prickle of unease. "Is there a problem?" "Just one moment, sir." She picked up a phone, turning slightly away, speaking in hushed tones. Carter caught fragments. "Military escort. Yes, in uniform. I know, but—" A man appeared mid-40s, sharp suit manager written all over him. His name tag read, Derek Hoffman, Customer Service Supervisor. He didn't meet Carter's eyes directly. "Colonel Carter, I'm Derek Hoffman. Could we speak privately for a moment?" "Whatever you need to say can be said here," Carter replied, his voice steady but firm. Several nearby passengers had begun to notice the interaction. Hoffman shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding with your booking." "There's no misunderstanding. I'm escorting a fallen soldier home. The military liaison office confirmed everything 3 days ago." "Yes, well..." Hoffman pulled out a tablet, swiping through screens. "Our security protocols have been updated. We're showing that the remains haven't completed the proper screening process." Carter felt heat rise in his chest. The remains. His name is Private First Class Jason Reynolds. And what screening process? He's in a sealed transfer case with full military documentation. "I understand, sir, but post-9/11 regulations require—" "Stop." Carter's voice cut through the airport noise like a blade. "I've done this before, twice, same airline. Are you telling me that American Airlines is refusing to transport a fallen American soldier?" The gate area had gone quiet. Phones appeared in hands, subtle at first, then more obvious. An elderly woman in a pearl necklace stood up from her seat. "Excuse me, is there a problem here?" Hoffman's face reddened. "Ma'am, this is a private conversation." "Nothing about this is private," the woman said, her voice carrying the authority of age and indignation. "This soldier is trying to bring another soldier home. What possible reason could you have for stopping him?" A man in a business suit joined her. "I'm recording this," he announced, his phone raised. "Just so there's a record." Hoffman's composure cracked slightly. "Sir, please, there's no need." "Actually, there is," the businessman said. "I'm a corporate attorney, and I'm very interested in hearing what security protocol prevents a uniformed military escort from accompanying a fallen soldier." Carter remained still, letting the moment build. He'd learned long ago that sometimes silence was the most powerful weapon. The crowd was growing, passengers from other gates drawn by the commotion. "Look," Hoffman said, sweat beading on his forehead. "Let me call my regional manager. Maybe we can work something out." "Work something out." A new voice entered the conversation, deep gravelly. A man in his 60s pushed through the crowd, walking with a slight limp. He wore a Marine's cap, his jacket covered in unit patches. "Son, do you know what this man is doing?" He pointed at Carter. "He's performing one of the most sacred duties in the military. He's bringing a brother home." "Sir, I appreciate your concern, but—" "No, you don't appreciate anything," the Marine shot back. "What's your name again, Hoffman?" "Well, Mr. Hoffman, I lost 3 men in Vietnam. You know who brought them home?" "Men like him." He gestured at Carter. Men who volunteered to make sure our fallen were never alone, never forgotten. And you're standing here talking about protocols." The crowd murmured agreement. More phones appeared. Someone was live streaming on Facebook. Another person was already typing furiously, probably Twitter. "I need to make a call," Hoffman said, retreating toward the service desk. Just wait here." Carter finally spoke, his voice calm, but carrying to every corner of the gate area. "I'll wait. But while I'm waiting, everyone should know that Private First Class Jason Reynolds is 19 years old. He died saving 2 of his squad mates from an IED in Afghanistan. His mother is waiting for him in Detroit. She works 2 jobs to pay the bills because his father died when Jason was 12. She hasn't seen her son in 8 months, and now she never will again. Except for today. Today she gets to say goodbye. Unless American Airlines has decided their protocols are more important than a mother's grief." A woman began crying. Someone else started clapping slowly, then others joined. The Marine veteran stood at attention and saluted. Carter returned it, then faced the growing crowd. "I don't want your applause," he said. "I want to complete my mission. I want to take that young man home." A teenager, maybe 17, raised his phone. "Colonel, I just posted this on TikTok. It already has 3,000 views. The caption says, 'American Airlines won't let soldier bring another soldier home.' Is that accurate?" Before Carter could respond, Melissa the gate agent spoke up, her voice shaking. "This is wrong. This is just wrong." She looked at Hoffman's retreating back, then at Carter. "My brother served in Iraq. Twice." She began typing on her computer. "I don't care if I get fired." "Ma'am, don't risk your job for key." "No, Colonel. Some things are more important." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "There. You're checked in. First class seat 2A. Board whenever you're ready." The crowd erupted in cheers, but the celebration was premature. Hoffman returned, his face now pale, followed by 2 airport security officers. "Ms. Peterson," he said to Melissa, "step away from the computer. You're relieved of duty pending review." "Fine," Melissa said, removing her name tag and setting it on the counter. "I'd rather be unemployed than be part of this." The security officers looked uncomfortable, their eyes darting between Carter Hoffman and the growing crowd. One of them, a young man who couldn't have been more than 25, whispered something to his partner. "We're not here to remove anyone," the second officer announced. "We're just here to keep the peace." "The only one disturbing the peace is him." The Marine veteran pointed at Hoffman. "Colonel Carter has been nothing but respectful." Hoffman's phone rang. He answered it, his face cycling through expressions: surprise, fear, anger. "Yes, sir. Yes, I understand. But the protocol clearly states..." "Yes, sir. Right away, sir." He hung up, looking like he'd swallowed something bitter. "Colonel Carter, it seems there's been a miscommunication. You're cleared to board." "What about Reynolds?" Carter asked. "The Private Reynolds is also cleared." "And Melissa..." Hoffman's jaw clenched. "That's an internal matter." "No," Carter said. "She stood up for what was right. If she goes, I don't board. Reynolds doesn't board. And this story, which I'm guessing is already going viral, gets a lot worse for American Airlines." The crowd had swelled to over 100 people. Someone started chanting, "Let her stay." Others joined in. The security officer stepped back clearly, wanting no part of this. Hoffman's phone rang again. This time, his face went white. He answered, said, "Yes, sir," 5 times, then hung up. "Ms. Peterson, please return to your station. We'll discuss this later." Melissa smiled, tears in her eyes, and returned to her position. The crowd cheered again, but Carter raised his hand for silence. "This isn't over," he said, addressing Hoffman, but speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "What happened here today is a symptom of a larger problem. When corporations forget their humanity, when protocol becomes more important than people, when a fallen soldier can't even make it home without a fight, we've lost something fundamental." A woman in a business suit stepped forward. "Colonel, I'm Rebecca Chen from CNN. We've been monitoring the social media explosion around this. Would you be willing to give us a statement?" "After I complete my mission," Carter said. "Reynolds comes first." The boarding process began, but it was unlike any boarding Carter had ever experienced. Every passenger stopped to shake his hand to thank him, to share their own military connections. The Marine veteran insisted on helping with Carter's bag, though Carter carried only a small briefcase. As Carter took his seat, his phone buzzed with text after text. "Lieutenant Kim." "Sir, what's happening? You're trending on Twitter." His commander. "Carter, the Pentagon is asking questions." His wife. "David, are you okay?" "It's all over the news." He turned his phone off. None of that mattered right now. What mattered was the cargo hold below where Jason Reynolds lay, waiting for his final flight home. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, breaking from standard script. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain James Morrison. I'm a former Air Force pilot, and I want you all to know that we have the honor today of carrying Army Private First Class Jason Reynolds home to his final rest. He's being escorted by Colonel David Carter, who's seated in 2A. On behalf of the entire crew, Colonel, thank you for your service, and thank you for bringing our brother home." The cabin erupted in applause. Carter stared straight ahead, his eyes burning with unshed tears. This wasn't supposed to be about him. It was about Reynolds. Always about Reynolds. But as the plane pushed back from the gate, Carter allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They'd tried to stop him, tried to reduce Reynolds to a protocol violation, tried to make this sacred duty into a corporate inconvenience. They'd failed. The flight to Detroit took 90 minutes. Carter spent it reviewing his notes, preparing for the moment he'd have to face Reynolds' mother. He'd done this before, but it never got easier. How do you tell a mother that her son died a hero when all she wants is her son back? The plane began its descent into Detroit Metropolitan Airport. Captain Morrison came back on the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our approach into Detroit. When we land, I'm going to ask you all to remain seated. Colonel Carter will deplane first to receive Private Reynolds. It's a tradition, a sign of respect. I know you're all eager to get to your destinations, but I'm asking for a few minutes of your time to honor a fallen hero." No one complained. In fact, the cabin was eerily quiet, a sharp contrast to the usual rustling and phone checking that accompanied landing. They touched down at 11:33 a.m., 3 minutes ahead of schedule. As the plane taxied to the gate, Carter could see the honor guard waiting on the tarmac, 7 soldiers in dress uniform standing at attention despite the bitter wind. He stood, and every eye in the cabin followed him. As he walked toward the exit, passengers began standing one by one, filling the aisle behind him. The flight attendant at the door had tears streaming down her face. "Colonel," she whispered, "thank you." Carter stepped out of the jet bridge and onto the stairs that had been rolled up to the aircraft. Below, he could see the cargo hold opening, the honor guard moving into position. A hearse waited nearby, its back door open. But something else caught his attention. Vehicles were pulling up, news vans, their satellite dishes already extending. Police cars, their lights flashing. And beyond the security fence, a growing crowd of people. His phone, which he'd turned back on, immediately buzzed with an incoming call. "Lieutenant Kim." "Sir, you need to know something. The video from the airport has gone completely viral. 15 million views in the last hour. The Secretary of Defense has issued a statement. American Airlines stock is down 3%. And sir, there's more." "What kind of more, Lieutenant?" "The kind where a bunch of veterans organizations are organizing protests at American Airlines counters across the country. The kind where 3 senators have called for investigations. The kind where the airline CEO is about to hold an emergency press conference." Carter watched as the honor guard gently, reverently removed Reynolds' transfer case from the cargo hold. "None of that matters right now, Lieutenant." "Sir, there's one more thing. Mrs. Reynolds, Jason's mother, she's here. But she's not alone. There are about 200 veterans with her. They formed a motorcycle escort to bring her to the airport. Sir, it's something you need to see. Carter looked beyond the hearse and saw them, a sea of leather jackets and military patches, American flags mounted on motorcycles standing in perfect formation. And in their center, a small woman in a black dress clutching a folded American flag to her chest. He descended the stairs slowly, his every movement deliberate, respectful. The honor guard had placed Reynolds on a rolling platform, the American flag draped over the transfer case pristine despite the wind. Carter approached and placed his hand on the case. "Welcome home, soldier," he said quietly. The honor guard lifted Reynolds, moving toward the hearse with mechanical precision that somehow managed to convey infinite gentleness. Carter followed, but a commotion near the terminal caught his attention. Derek Hoffman was there, along with what looked like a dozen airline executives. They were trying to approach, but the police were holding them back. One of them, a woman in an expensive suit, was gesturing frantically, apparently trying to explain something to the officers. A police sergeant approached Carter. "Sir, the airline executives want to speak with you. Something about an apology and a press opportunity." Carter looked at them, then at Mrs. Reynolds, who was walking toward him, her face a mask of grief and dignity. "Tell them they're too late," Carter said. "This isn't their moment. It never was." He met Mrs. Reynolds halfway. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 40, though grief had added years to her face. Her hands shook as she reached out to him. "Colonel Carter." "Yes, ma'am." "Thank you for bringing my boy home." Her voice broke on the last word. "Ma'am, your son saved 2 lives. He died a hero." She nodded, tears flowing freely. "He always wanted to be a soldier, since he was little. Said he wanted to protect people." She looked at the hearse where the honor guard was securing her son for his final ride. "I guess he did." The motorcycle veterans had formed a protective circle around them, keeping the media at bay. Their leader, a grizzled man with a gray beard and a leather vest covered in patches, approached Carter. "Colonel, we'll escort you and Mrs. Reynolds to the funeral home. Nobody's going to bother you on our watch." Carter nodded his thanks. As he helped Mrs. Reynolds into the limousine that would follow the hearse, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number he didn't recognize. "Colonel Carter, this is General Patricia Matthews from the Pentagon. I wanted to personally thank you for your actions today. What you did standing your ground, it's reminded a lot of people what service really means." "General, I was just doing my duty." "No, Colonel, you did much more than that. You reminded America that some things are sacred, that some protocols need to be broken, that honor isn't negotiable." As the motorcycle engines roared to life, as the hearse began its slow journey with Reynolds and his grief-stricken mother Carter, reflected on the morning's events. American Airlines had made a catastrophic error, one that would cost them millions in bad publicity and lost customers. The executives would apologize. Policies would be changed. Someone would probably lose their job. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that Jason Reynolds was home. The procession moved through Detroit's streets, and something extraordinary happened. People stopped. Construction workers removed their hard hats. Cars pulled over. Police officers at intersections saluted. It was as if the entire city had decided to pause to acknowledge this young man's sacrifice. Carter's phone continued buzzing, more calls from the Pentagon, from media outlets, from fellow officers. He ignored them all. His duty wasn't finished yet. It wouldn't be finished until Reynolds was laid to rest, until his mother had said her final goodbye, until the flag was folded and presented with the words, "On behalf of a grateful nation." But even as he focused on the immediate task, Carter knew this story wasn't over. What had happened at the airport had struck a nerve, had awakened something in the American consciousness. The video clips were everywhere now. The confrontation with Hoffman, the Marine veteran's impassioned speech, Melissa's defiant stand, the crowd's spontaneous support. American Airlines would weather this storm probably. Corporations usually did. But for one morning and one airport, regular people had stood up and said no. No to bureaucracy trumping humanity. No to dishonoring sacrifice. No to forgetting what really mattered. The funeral home appeared ahead, a stately building with columns and perfectly manicured grounds. The motorcycle escorts peeled off one by one, forming an honor line. As the hearse pulled up, Carter saw more people gathering: neighbors, local veterans, complete strangers drawn by social media to pay their respects. He helped Mrs. Reynolds from the limousine. She gripped his arm tightly, drawing strength from his presence. "Colonel," she said softly, "I saw the video. What they tried to do to you, to Jason. It doesn't matter now, ma'am." "Yes, it does." Her voice grew stronger. "My son died defending others. You defended him when he couldn't defend himself. That matters. That will always matter." As they walked toward the funeral home following Jason Reynolds to his final rest, Carter realized she was right. It did matter. Every stand taken, every voice raised, every person who refused to accept the unacceptable, it all mattered. The honor guard lifted Reynolds again, carrying him through the funeral home's doors. Carter and Mrs. Reynolds followed, leaving the chaos of the outside world behind. In here, there was only grief and honor loss and love. But outside, the story was exploding. #LetHimFly had become the #1 trending topic worldwide. American Airlines stock continued to plummet. The CEO's emergency press conference had been a disaster, his corporate speak no match for the raw emotion of the airport video. Veterans organizations were calling for boycotts. Politicians were demanding investigations. 3 hours later, as Carter stood at attention while Mrs. Reynolds said goodbye to her son for the last time, his phone vibrated with a text from Lieutenant Kim. "Sir, American Airlines just announced a complete review of all policies regarding military escorts and fallen soldiers. The DoD is drafting new federal regulations. Melissa Peterson has been promoted and will lead their new military affairs division. And, sir, the President wants to speak with you." Carter turned his phone off again. The President could wait. Jason Reynolds and his mother could not. As the sun set over Detroit, casting long shadows through the funeral home's windows, Carter remained at his post. He would stay until the viewing was over, until the last visitor had paid their respects, until Mrs. Reynolds was ready to leave. Tomorrow would bring the funeral, the 21-gun salute, the playing of taps. There would be interviews and investigations, policy changes and public apologies. But tonight, in this quiet place, there was only a mother's grief and a soldier's vigil. Everything else, the viral videos, the corporate fallout, the national outrage, was just noise. Carter thought about the twist of fate that had brought him here. If Hoffman had simply let him board, none of this would have happened. Reynolds would have come home quietly, privately, known only to his family and fellow soldiers. Instead, his sacrifice had become a national moment of reckoning. His name known to millions who would never have heard it otherwise. Perhaps that was the real twist in this story. In trying to diminish one soldier's journey home, American Airlines had instead amplified it beyond measure. Jason Reynolds, who had died protecting others in a distant land, had in death protected something else, the sacred bond between America and those who serve in its name. The funeral home grew quiet as the last visitors departed. Mrs. Reynolds sat alone with her son, speaking softly to the closed casket. Carter stood in the doorway, maintaining his watch. He would stand there all night if needed. It was the least he could do. His phone, still silenced, showed dozens of missed calls and hundreds of messages. The world wanted to hear from him, wanted his thoughts on what had become a defining moment in American civil-military relations. But Carter had nothing to say that hadn't already been said by his actions. Some battles were fought with weapons, others were fought with words. Today's battle had been fought with simple human decency, and against all odds, decency had won. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The airline industry would push back against proposed regulations. The news cycle would move on to other outrages. The viral videos would be replaced by newer, shinier content. But tonight, in a funeral home in Detroit, a 19-year-old soldier was home. His mother could say goodbye. His sacrifice would be honored. That was all that mattered. That was all that had ever mattered. Colonel David Carter stood watch, and he would continue standing watch until his duty was complete. Because that's what soldiers do. They complete the mission, no matter the obstacles, no matter the cost. And sometimes, just sometimes, completing the mission means changing the world. The funeral home's silence shattered at 3:47 a.m. when Carter's secure phone rang with a distinctive tone he couldn't ignore Joint Chief's priority. He stepped into the hallway, leaving Mrs. Reynolds dozing in the chair beside her son's casket. "Carter," he answered quietly. "Colonel, this is General Matthews. I apologize for the hour, but we have a situation developing. The President is convening an emergency meeting at 0800. Your presence is required. General, with respect, the funeral is at 1000 hours. I'm not leaving Mrs. Reynolds or Private Reynolds." There was a pause. "The meeting is about what happened at the airport, David. American Airlines CEO reached out to the Secretary of Defense. They're claiming you instigated a riot that cost them $20 million in market value already." Carter felt his jaw tighten. "They're claiming what?" "Their legal team is saying you deliberately inflamed the situation for personal gain. They have security footage they claim shows you orchestrating the crowd response. David, this has gone beyond a simple escort duty. They're threatening to sue the Department of Defense." The absurdity of it almost made Carter laugh. Let them try. It's not that simple. The President wants to get ahead of this. There's talk of congressional hearings. The airline lobby is pushing hard, saying military personnel are getting special treatment that compromises security. Some senators are actually listening. Before Carter could respond, he heard commotion outside. Through the window, he saw news vans pulling up their lights, cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. How had they found him here? "General, I'll call you back." He moved to the front entrance where the funeral director, Mr. James Patterson, an elderly African-American man with kind eyes, was already trying to manage the situation. "Colonel, they're demanding a statement," Patterson said. "I've told them this is private property, but they're setting up on the sidewalk." Through the glass doors, Carter could see at least a dozen reporters and camera crews. Someone had leaked his location. Then his phone buzzed a text from Lieutenant Kim, with a link to a news article. American Airlines fights back, claims decorated colonel staged viral confrontation. The story was already online, complete with carefully edited security footage that made it look like Carter had deliberately gathered the crowd, that he had planned the whole confrontation. They'd even found an angle that made it appear he'd coached the Marine veteran before he spoke up. Carter's phone rang again. This time it was his commander at Fort Campbell. "David, have you seen what they're doing?" "Just saw it, sir. It gets worse. They've hired Preston Communications, the same firm that handled the oil spill cover-up last year. They're going full offensive. They're claiming you have PTSD, that you're unstable, that the Army should never have allowed you to escort Reynolds." Carter's blood ran cold. They're using PTSD as a weapon. Their statement goes live in an hour. "David, I know you want to stay with the family, but you need to defend yourself. The Pentagon's lawyers are already en route to Detroit." A soft voice behind him made Carter turn. Mrs. Reynolds stood in the hallway, still wearing the same black dress, her eyes red from crying, but alert. "Colonel, what's happening?" "Nothing you need to worry about, ma'am. Just some administrative issues." She walked closer, looking out at the media circus. "This is about the airport, isn't it? They're trying to make you the villain." "It doesn't matter what they try." "Yes, it does." Her voice carried surprising strength. "My son died protecting others. You protected his dignity. Now let me protect you." Before Carter could stop her, she walked to the front door and opened it. The reporters surged forward, microphones, extended questions flying. "Mrs. Reynolds, how do you feel about—" She raised her hand, and something in her bearing made them all fall silent. "My name is Angela Reynolds. My son Jason is lying in a casket 20 feet from here. Colonel Carter volunteered to bring him home to me. That should have been simple, sacred. Instead, American Airlines tried to stop him. They called my dead son remains and talked about protocols while his body sat in their cargo hold." The cameras focused on her tear-stained face. "Now I hear they're calling Colonel Carter unstable. They're saying he staged this for attention. Let me tell you what I saw. I saw a man stand up for my son when a corporation tried to dishonor him. I saw American citizen strangers refuse to accept that dishonor. And now I see a billion-dollar company trying to destroy a good man's reputation because he embarrassed them. A reporter pushed forward. Mrs. Reynolds American Airlines claims they were following security protocols. Security protocols. Angela's voice rose. My 19-year-old son had his legs blown off by an IED. He bled out in the dirt trying to save his friends. You want to talk to me about security? That casket has been inspected by the military, sealed, documented, and certified. What more security did they need? Carter moved to stand beside her, trying to guide her back inside, but she shook him off. No, Colonel. They need to hear this. She faced the cameras again. American Airlines is worth billions. They have lawyers and PR firms and lobbyists. All we have is the truth. And the truth is that they tried to stop a hero from coming home, and when they got caught, they decided to destroy the man who stood up to them. A CNN reporter Carter recognized from the airport. Rebecca Chen stepped forward. Colonel Carter, would you care to respond to American Airlines allegations? Carter was about to decline when his phone buzzed. General Matthews again, but this time with a text. The president is watching. He says speak from the heart. Carter looked at the cameras, then at Angela Reynolds, then made his decision. At 0900 yesterday, I attempted to board American Airlines Flight 447 with one mission escort, Private First Class Jason Reynolds, home to his mother. The airline had been notified 3 days in advance through proper military channels. All documentation was in order. Yet when I arrived, I was told there was a security protocol issue. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I didn't gather that crowd. I didn't coach anyone's response. Those were American citizens who recognized something fundamentally wrong was happening and chose to speak up. The Marine veteran who defended me, I'd never seen him before. The gate agent who risked her job. Never met her. The businessman who recorded it, a stranger. Rebecca Chen pressed closer. But American Airlines says you deliberately escalated. I stood there for 43 minutes being told that a soldier who died for this country couldn't come home because of paperwork. I remained calm. I followed their process. It was only when ordinary Americans started questioning what was happening that things changed. Another reporter shouted, They claim you have PTSD and shouldn't have been assigned this duty. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Carter felt Angela Reynolds tense beside him. I served 5 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, Carter said slowly. I've lost soldiers under my command. I've been wounded twice. Do I have PTSD? I have memories that wake me at night. I have reactions to sudden noises. I have survivor's guilt every time I think about the men who didn't come home. But you know what that makes me human, and qualified to understand the sacred duty of bringing a fallen soldier home. His phone was ringing constantly now, the Pentagon, his commander numbers he didn't recognize. He ignored them all. American Airlines wants to make this about me because they can't defend what they did. They turned away a fallen soldier and the officer escorting him. When citizens objected, they threatened their own employee who tried to do the right thing. Now they're spending millions to spin this story because they can't admit they were wrong. The sound of motorcycle engines cut through the morning air. The Patriot Guard riders were arriving, dozens of them, their bikes creating a wall of chrome and thunder. They formed a barrier between the media and the funeral home, their presence a clear message: this ground was sacred. The lead rider, the same grizzled veteran from the airport, approached Carter and Angela. Ma'am, Colonel, we're here to make sure the funeral happens without interference. Nobody's getting past us unless you want them to. But then something unexpected happened. A black town car pulled up and Derek Hoffman stepped out. The man who had started all of this at the airport looked haggard, his suit wrinkled, his face drawn. He walked toward them, ignoring the shouting reporters. The Patriot Guard moved to block him, but Carter raised a hand. Let him through. Hoffman approached slowly, his hands visible, his body language screaming discomfort. When he reached them, he did something no one expected. He dropped to one knee in front of Angela Reynolds. "Mrs. Reynolds, I didn't know. When I saw him at the gate, all I saw was a protocol violation. I didn't see a mother waiting for her son. I didn't see a hero coming home. I saw paperwork and procedures and—" His voice broke. "I have a son. He's 17. He's talking about enlisting. When I watched the footage afterward, when I really watched it, I saw my boy in that casket. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry." Angela Reynolds looked down at him, her face unreadable. The cameras captured every second. "Get up," she said quietly. Hoffman stood, tears visible on his face. "You're sorry now because it went viral," Angela said. "You're sorry because your company is losing money. You're sorry because you got caught." "No," Hoffman said. "I'm sorry because I forgot how to be human. I've worked for airlines for 15 years. Somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing passengers as people. They became problems to manage complaints, to handle protocols to enforce. Your son deserved better. Colonel Carter deserved better. You deserved better." The cynical part of Carter wondered if this was orchestrated, another PR move. But looking at Hoffman's face, at the genuine anguish there, he wasn't sure. "Mr. Hoffman," Carter said, "why are you really here?" Hoffman reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "I was fired yesterday, about an hour after the video went viral. But I'm not here about that. I'm here because American Airlines is about to release a statement claiming you physically threatened me, that you incited violence. It's a lie, and I won't be part of it." He handed the envelope to Carter. "That's my sworn affidavit stating exactly what happened. No threats, no violence. Just a decorated officer trying to complete his mission while I hid behind corporate policy." Rebecca Chen pushed forward. "Mr. Hoffman, are you saying American Airlines is asking you to lie?" Hoffman turned to face the cameras. "I'm saying that in their panic to control this narrative, they're willing to destroy anyone. Colonel Carter, me, even Mrs. Reynolds if necessary. They offered me a substantial settlement if I signed an NDA and supported their version of events. I'm here instead." The sound of sirens approached. 3 police cars and 2 black SUVs with government plates pulled up. Men in dark suits emerged, federal agents of some kind. The lead agent, a woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes, approached Carter. "Colonel Carter, I'm Special Agent Diana Foster, Department of Justice. We need to speak with you about American Airlines' actions yesterday and today." "Can it wait until after the funeral?" Carter asked. "I'm afraid not. American Airlines filed a formal complaint 3 hours ago. They're claiming domestic terrorism." The words landed like a bomb. Even the reporters fell silent. "Terrorism." Angela Reynolds' voice was barely a whisper. "They're calling my son's escort a terrorist." Agent Foster looked uncomfortable. "They claim Colonel Carter deliberately incited violence to damage their business, that he used his military status to encourage boycotts and threats against their employees. They're demanding federal prosecution." Carter felt rage building in his chest, the kind he hadn't felt since combat. These people were trying to turn a sacred duty into a crime. "Agent Foster," he said, his voice deadly calm. "I'll speak with you, but not until after Private Reynolds is buried with full military honors. If American Airlines wants to arrest me at a soldier's funeral, let them try. Let the world see what they really are." Foster studied him for a moment, then nodded. "The funeral is at 1,000 hours. "Yes. We'll speak after. But Colonel, you should know this has gone all the way to the Attorney General. American Airlines has considerable influence." As if on cue, Carter's phone rang with another priority call from the Pentagon. This time it was the Secretary of Defense himself. "Colonel Carter, I'm ordering you to return to Washington immediately." "Sir, with all due respect, I'm attending Private Reynolds' funeral." "This is a direct order, Colonel." Carter looked at Angela Reynolds, at the casket visible through the funeral home windows, at the growing crowd of veterans surrounding them protectively. Then I respectfully refuse, sir. Court-martial me if you must, but I'm finishing this mission." The line went dead. The reporters were in a frenzy now, sensing the story escalating beyond anything they'd imagined. A decorated colonel refusing direct orders, a major corporation claiming terrorism, a grieving mother caught in the middle. But then, another unexpected voice cut through the chaos. Melissa Peterson, the gate agent who had defied Hoffman to help Carter board, pushed through the crowd. She wasn't alone. Behind her were at least 20 other American Airlines employees in uniform. "Colonel Carter," she called out, "we're here to support you, not the company you and Mrs. Reynolds." She turned to face the cameras. "American Airlines wants to paint Colonel Carter as a villain. They want you to believe he caused this, but I was there. I saw what really happened. And I'm not the only one." One by one, the other employees stepped forward. "I loaded Private Reynolds' casket," a ground crew worker said. "There was never a security issue. Never. I processed the military liaison paperwork 3 days ago," another employee added. "Everything was in order. This was about power, not protocol." "They threatened to fire all of us if we came here," Melissa said. "They said we'd be blacklisted from the industry, but some things matter more than a job." The Patriot Guard riders revved their engines in approval. The crowd was growing local veteran civilians who'd followed the story, even some active-duty military from the nearby reserve center. Agent Foster watched it all with calculating eyes. "Colonel, this situation is escalating. American Airlines has mobilized their entire legal team. They're claiming damages in the hundreds of millions now." "Let them," Carter said. "Every accusation they make just reveals more about who they really are." His phone buzzed with a text from Lieutenant Kim. "Sir, something's happening. American Airlines stock is in freefall, down 12% since market open. Board is meeting emergency session. CEO might be out." Then another text, this one from an unknown number. "Colonel Carter, this is Senator Patricia Williams' Armed Services Committee. Don't back down. We're convening emergency hearings tomorrow. American Airlines just made a fatal mistake claiming terrorism. Stand strong." The morning sun was fully up now, casting long shadows across the funeral home parking lot. In a few hours, Jason Reynolds would be laid to rest. But what should have been a quiet, dignified ceremony had become a national flashpoint. Carter looked at the scene around him. Media, federal agents, veterans, airline employees who'd risked everything to stand for truth, and at the center of it all, Angela Reynolds still clutching that folded flag, still waiting to bury her son. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said softly, "I'm sorry this has become a circus. Your son deserved better." She took his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "My son died fighting. Seems fitting that his journey home would be a fight too. Don't you dare apologize for standing up for him." A commotion at the edge of the crowd drew their attention. A convoy of military vehicles was arriving, not just a few, but dozens. Humvees, troop transports, even an honor guard bus. Soldiers in dress uniforms emerged, forming ranks with precision that took everyone's breath away. A full colonel approached Carter, saluting sharply. "Colonel Carter, I'm Colonel Michael Rodriguez, commanding officer of the 101st Airborne. We heard one of our own was being dishonored. We're here to ensure Private Reynolds receives the send-off he deserves." Behind Rodriguez, more soldiers kept arriving. Not just from one unit, but from bases all across Michigan and beyond. The crowd parted respectfully as they formed up, creating a corridor from the funeral home to the hearse. Agent Foster spoke quietly into her radio, then approached Carter again. "Colonel, I just received word from Washington. The Attorney General has declined to pursue American Airlines terrorism claims. They're calling them frivolous and potentially defamatory. You're not under investigation." The relief was momentary. Carter knew American Airlines wouldn't give up that easily. They'd spent too much, committed too hard to back down now. As if reading his thoughts, Foster continued. "But they're pursuing civil action. They've filed a lawsuit claiming defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and interference with business operations. They're seeking $300 million in damages. The number was so absurd it was almost laughable. But Carter knew what this was really about: intimidation. Make the number so big, the fight so expensive, that he'd have no choice but to settle to sign an NDA to let them control the narrative. Colonel Derek Hoffman spoke up. I recorded my conversation with the executives yesterday. They specifically discussed destroying Carter and making an example that no one challenges us again. It's all on my phone. Foster's eyes sharpened. Mr. Hoffman, that recording could be evidence of conspiracy and defamation. Would you be willing to share it? Already sent it to 5 different news outlets, Hoffman said. It goes live in 30 minutes unless American Airlines withdraws all charges and allegations against Colonel Carter. The crowd stirred as another vehicle arrived, a limousine with diplomatic plates. The door opened and out stepped someone. Carter never expected to see General Zhang Wei of the People's Liberation Army of China, whom Carter had met during a joint training exercise years ago. Colonel Carter, Zhang said in accented but clear English, approaching with his aide. I am here representing several foreign military attachés. We have been following this situation. It is disgraceful how your American corporation treats your warriors. He turned to the cameras. In China, we have many disagreements with America. But one thing we respect is how you honor your fallen soldiers. Or we thought you did. This airline has shown that profit matters more than honor. The international military community is watching, and we stand with Colonel Carter. The story had just gone global in a way American Airlines never anticipated. Foreign military officials defending an American colonel against an American corporation, the optics were devastating. Carter's phone rang again. This time, it was someone from American Airlines' board of directors, a name he recognized from business news. Colonel Carter, this is Margaret Thompson from the board. We need to find a resolution to this situation. The resolution is simple, Carter said. Apologize to Mrs. Reynolds. Honor Private Reynolds. Stop attacking those who stood up for what's right. It's not that simple. Our CEO has committed. Then uncommit him. Your company started this. You can end it. But every minute you continue these attacks, you damage not just your brand, but America's reputation globally. There was a pause. The board is meeting now. Please don't make any more statements until we've voted. Carter hung up. The funeral was in 2 hours, and he was done negotiating with corporate executives while a mother waited to bury her son. But the morning's drama wasn't over. A helicopter appeared overhead, military, but not a model Carter recognized immediately. It circled once, then began descending toward the parking lot the police had cleared. As it touched down, Carter saw the markings, Marine One, the president's helicopter. The door opened, and out stepped, not the president, but the Vice President Robert Harrison, a former Navy SEAL who'd lost his left arm in Iraq. He walked directly to Angela Reynolds, ignoring everyone else. Mrs. Reynolds, I'm here on behalf of the President and a grateful nation. Your son's sacrifice will not be overshadowed by corporate greed. He turned to Carter. Colonel, the President sends his regards and a message. Stand your ground. The nation is watching, and we stand with you. The Vice President then faced the cameras. Let me be clear. The United States government views any attack on those escorting our fallen heroes as an attack on the military itself. American Airlines has crossed a line. They have 1 hour to withdraw all accusations and apologize or face congressional investigation, federal oversight, and potential criminal charges for false claims of terrorism. The crowd erupted in cheers. American Airlines had just been given an ultimatum by the second highest office in the land. Carter's phone buzzed with rapid-fire texts from Lieutenant Kim. Sir, American Airlines CEO just resigned. Board released statement. Full apology coming. They're withdrawing everything. But Carter wasn't celebrating. This had never been about winning against American Airlines. It had been about completing a simple mission, bringing Jason Reynolds home with dignity. Mr. Vice President, Carter said, thank you, but we need to focus on what matters. The funeral is in 90 minutes. Harrison nodded. Of course. The president has authorized full military honors. The Air Force is sending a flyover. The Marine Corps band is en route. Private Reynolds will receive the send-off he deserves. As the various officials and media began to disperse preparing for the funeral, Carter found himself alone with Angela Reynolds for a moment. "It's almost over," he told her. She shook her head. "No, Colonel, this is just the beginning. What happened here, what you did, it's going to change things. Jason's death meant something in Afghanistan. Now it means something here too." The funeral procession began forming up. The military presence was overwhelming now, hundreds of soldiers, Marines, airmen, and sailors, all here to honor one 19-year-old private who died saving others. As Carter helped Angela into the limousine that would follow the hearse, he saw Melissa Peterson and the other airline employees who'd risked their careers standing with the crowd. Derek Hoffman was there too, no longer the corporate automaton from the airport, but a man who'd remembered his humanity. The motorcycles roared to life, their sound echoing across Detroit. The hearse began moving, and behind it a procession that had grown to over 1,000 people. American Airlines would survive this crisis, Carter knew. They'd apologize, make donations to veterans organizations, maybe create a new policy named after Jason Reynolds. The news cycle would move on. But something had shifted in those hours at the airport and after. A line had been drawn. A precedent had been set. And Private First Class Jason Reynolds, who died protecting his squad in Afghanistan, had in death protected something larger. The principle that some things were sacred, that corporations couldn't buy their way out of dishonor, that ordinary people standing together could still make a difference. The cemetery gates appeared ahead. The honor guard was already in position. The grave was ready. Time to complete the mission. Time to lay a hero to rest. The cemetery stretched before them like Arlington itself had been transplanted to Detroit. Rows of white headstones standing at attention in the morning light. Carter watched as the honor guard lifted Jason Reynolds from the hearse with a precision that transformed grief into ceremony. The flag draped over the casket rippled slightly in the wind, and for a moment, Carter was back in Afghanistan, watching that same flag cover too many young soldiers. Angela Reynolds walked beside him, her hand gripping his arm. Behind them, the massive procession had grown even larger, with people abandoning their cars along the route to join on foot. The vice president walked 3 steps behind his presence, lending federal weight to what should have been a private moment. As they approached the gravesite, Carter noticed something wrong. A cluster of men in expensive suits stood near the cemetery administration building, papers in hand. One of them started forward, but a wall of Marines materialized to block his path. "That's close enough," the Marine captain said firmly. "We have a court injunction," the suit announced loudly enough for the cameras to catch. "This funeral cannot proceed until certain legal matters are resolved." Carter felt Angela's grip tighten painfully on his arm. The crowd behind them rumbled with anger. The vice president stepped forward, his face darkening. "On whose authority?" Harrison demanded. "American Airlines has filed an emergency motion claiming this funeral is a publicity stunt designed to further damage their reputation. Judge Morrison has issued a temporary restraining order pending a hearing." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, Angela Reynolds released Carter's arm and walked forward past the Marines, straight up to the lawyer. She was a small woman, barely 5'2", but something in her bearing made the lawyer step back. "You're trying to stop me from burying my son." Her voice was quiet, deadly. "Ma'am, this is a legal matter. My son's body has been above ground for 5 days. 5 days. He died 10,000 miles from home, and now you want to leave him unburied because your clients are embarrassed." The lawyer fumbled with his papers. "The injunction is very specific." Angela snatched the papers from his hands and tore them in half. Then quarters. Then eighths, letting the pieces fall like snow. "Your injunction means nothing. We're burying my son." "Ma'am, you're in contempt of court. Then arrest me." She turned to the cameras. "Let America see a grieving mother handcuffed at her son's funeral, because an airline company can't admit they were wrong. The vice president pulled out his phone. "Get me the attorney general, now." He listened for a moment, then handed the phone to the lawyer. "It's for you." The lawyer took the phone reluctantly, his face paling as he listened. After 30 seconds, he handed it back and turned to his colleagues. "We're withdrawing the injunction." But the damage was done. The crowd's anger had transformed into something darker, more dangerous. Veterans were pushing forward, some pulling out phones to record, others simply glaring at the lawyers with undisguised hostility. "You need to leave," Colonel Rodriguez said to the lawyers. "Now, before this gets ugly." As the lawyers retreated, Carter noticed one of them drop something, a flash drive that skittered across the pavement. A young Marine picked it up, started to call after them, then stopped and handed it to Carter instead. "Sir, you might want to see what's on this." Carter pocketed it, focusing on the immediate task. The honor guard had resumed their movement toward the grave. The ceremony could proceed, but the sanctity of the moment had been shattered. The graveside was arranged with military precision. 7 rifles for the 21-gun salute, the bugler positioned on a small rise chairs for Angela and the immediate family. As they took their positions, Carter noticed Secret Service agents stationed throughout the cemetery. Whatever was happening had attracted the highest levels of attention. The chaplain, Major Thomas Williams, began the service with words worn smooth by too many repetitions. "We gather today to honor Private First Class Jason Reynolds, who gave his life in service to our nation." Carter had heard these words before, but they hit differently now. Every sentence felt like an accusation against those who had tried to dishonor this moment. As Williams spoke, Carter's phone vibrated with an urgent message from Lieutenant Kim. "Sir, check the news, now." He ignored it. Nothing mattered more than this moment. But then he noticed others checking their phones, gasps rippling through the crowd. The vice president's aide whispered urgently in his ear. Something was happening. The chaplain continued, unaware of the disturbance. "Jason Reynolds exemplified the values we hold dear: courage, sacrifice, honor." A commotion at the cemetery entrance drew everyone's attention. A convoy of black SUVs had arrived, and emerging from the lead vehicle was someone Carter never expected to see: David Morrison, CEO of American Airlines. Former CEO Carter corrected himself, remembering the morning's resignation. But Morrison wasn't alone. With him were what looked like the entire board of directors, all in black suits, all looking deeply uncomfortable. They started toward the gravesite, but the Marines moved to intercept them. "Let them through," Angela Reynolds said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. "Let them come. Let them see what they tried to stop." Morrison and his entourage approached slowly, like defendants approaching the bench. When they reached the gravesite, Morrison did something unexpected. He knelt. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said, his voice carrying in the silence. "I came to apologize. Not the corporate apology our lawyers wrote, but a real one. I've been CEO for 3 years, and in that time, I've lost sight of what matters. Your son's death, his sacrifice, it's real. It matters. And we dishonored it." He pulled out a small box and opened it. Inside was a pair of wings, military pilot wings. "These were my father's. He flew bombers in World War II. Died when I was 12. I became everything he wouldn't have recognized: someone who put profit over people, protocol over principle." Angela studied him for a long moment. "Why are you really here?" Morrison stood slowly. "Because an hour ago our entire board voted. American Airlines will be establishing the Jason Reynolds Foundation for Military Families. Full college scholarships for children of fallen soldiers. It won't bring your son back, but maybe it ensures his sacrifice creates something positive." The crowd stirred. This felt like more than a PR move. The entire board was here in person, at significant legal risk given the ongoing situation. "There's more," Morrison continued. "Every American Airlines employee involved in the initial denial has been terminated. Not scapegoated, they followed policies I approved. Those policies have been eliminated. Military escorts will never be questioned again. Carter watched Angela's face, saw her struggling between grief and anger, between the desire for justice and the need for peace. "Your apology doesn't bring back my son," she said finally. "But maybe it prevents another mother from going through this. Continue the service, chaplain." As Major Williams resumed the service, Carter noticed something troubling. Several of the Secret Service agents were moving, taking new positions. The Vice President's aide was on his phone, his face grave. Something was happening beyond this cemetery. The 21-gun salute shattered the morning air, 7 rifles firing 3 times, the sharp cracks echoing across the headstones. With each volley, Angela Reynolds flinched, as if feeling the bullets that had taken her son. The bugler raised his instrument, and the mournful notes of taps began to flow across the cemetery. It was then that Carter's phone rang with the priority tone he couldn't ignore, a direct call from the Pentagon's Crisis Center. He stepped back slightly and answered. "Colonel, we have a situation. There's been an incident at Cincinnati Airport. The American Airlines counter, someone's taken hostages. They're demanding to speak with you." Carter's blood went cold. "Who?" "A veteran. Says his son died in Iraq and was transported by American Airlines 3 years ago. Says they lost the body for 2 days. He wants justice, and he says if you don't come, he'll—" The line crackled with interference. In the distance, Carter could hear sirens, lots of them. The Vice President was already being moved by his security detail. "Colonel," Harrison said quietly as he passed, "handle this. You've become the face of this issue. That man will listen to you." The funeral was concluding. The honor guard was folding the flag with elaborate precision, each fold deliberate and meaningful. 13 folds total, transforming the flag into a tight triangle. The commanding officer knelt before Angela Reynolds, presenting it to her with the traditional words, "On behalf of the President of the United States Army, and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your loved one's honorable and faithful service." Angela clutched the flag to her chest, tears streaming down her face. The crowd began to disperse, but Carter caught her arm gently. "Mrs. Reynolds, I have to go. There's an emergency." "Related to this?" she asked, gesturing at the grave where workers would soon lower her son. "Yes, another parent, another story of dishonor. Someone who's reached a breaking point." Angela nodded slowly. "Go. Jason would want you to help." Carter found Colonel Rodriguez. "I need a helicopter. Now." "Already inbound," Rodriguez replied. 2 minutes out. I'm coming with you." As they waited, Carter pulled out the flash drive the lawyer had dropped. He handed it to Melissa Peterson, who had lingered after the service. "Get this to the media. Whatever's on it, American Airlines didn't want it public." The helicopter appeared, military markings clear against the gray sky. As Carter and Rodriguez ran toward it, Morrison called out, "Colonel, I'm coming with you. This is my mess to clean up too." Carter hesitated, then nodded. Morrison might be useful in negotiating. The flight to Cincinnati took 20 minutes, during which Carter was briefed via secure phone. The hostage taker was Staff Sergeant Marcus Thompson, medically retired after an IED took his right leg in Ramadi. His son, Specialist David Thompson, had been killed in a convoy attack in 2021. When American Airlines transported the body home, they'd somehow misrouted it to Cincinnati instead of Cleveland. The family had waited at the airport for 6 hours before being told their son's body was lost in the system. It had taken 2 days to locate and redirect the casket. "He's got 3 airline employees in the back office," the negotiator reported. "Says he doesn't want to hurt anyone, just wants someone to listen. He asked for you specifically, Colonel. Says you're the only one who understands." The helicopter descended towards Cincinnati Airport, and Carter could see the massive police presence, SWAT vehicles, ambulances, news vans everywhere. The same airport where this had all started days ago. They landed on a closed runway and were immediately surrounded by federal agents. The lead negotiator, a haggard-looking man named Special Agent Rick Torres, briefed them as they moved toward the terminal. Thompson's been in there 2 hours. He's armed legally owned Glock 19. No shots fired. The hostages are unharmed but terrified. He's barricaded in the customer service office behind the counter. What are his demands? Carter asked. He wants American Airlines to acknowledge what they did to his son. He wants them to apologize publicly. And he wants to tell his story to someone who understands. That's you, Colonel. They entered the terminal through a service entrance. The departure area had been evacuated, leaving an eerie emptiness where thousands usually milled about. Through the windows of the customer service office, Carter could see Marcus Thompson, mid-40s, graying beard, prosthetic leg visible below his shorts. He was sitting in an office chair, the gun held loosely in his lap. The 3 hostages were seated against the far wall, terrified but unharmed. "Let me go in alone," Carter said. "Absolutely not," Torres replied. "Protocol requires—" "Protocol is what started all this," Carter interrupted. "That man doesn't need a negotiator. He needs someone who understands. I'm going in." Before anyone could stop him, Carter walked toward the office door. Thompson saw him coming and stood the gun rising slightly. "Colonel Carter." "Yes, Marcus. I'm here." "Are you armed?" "No." "Come in." Slowly. Carter entered the office, hands visible. Up close, he could see Thompson was exhausted. Probably hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red-rimmed, whether from tears or fatigue, Carter couldn't tell. "Tell them your son's story," Carter said simply. Thompson's composure cracked slightly. David was 22, smart kid, wanted to be an engineer after his service. He was 3 weeks from rotating home when an IED hit his convoy. Killed instantly, they said. Merciful, they said. Carter remained silent, letting him talk. "I was in Cleveland waiting. His mother, my ex, she was there too. First time we'd been in the same room in 5 years, but we came together for David. We waited 6 hours. 6 hours before some manager told us there'd been a routing error. Like our son was a lost package." The gun shook in Thompson's hands. Behind him, the hostages whimpered. 2 days, Colonel. For 2 days, we didn't know where our boy was. They found him in Cincinnati, in a storage area with lost luggage. Lost luggage. My son died for this country, and they put him with lost luggage. That's unforgivable, Carter said quietly. They gave us a form apology and flight vouchers. Flight vouchers. As if we'd ever fly with them again. Thompson laughed bitterly. I tried to let it go. Tried to move on. But then I saw what they did to you, to that young soldier. And I realized they never learned. They never cared. It's all just protocol and profit to them. Morrison stepped into view outside the office window. Thompson's gun snapped up. Who's that? David Morrison, former CEO of American Airlines. He wants to apologize. Now he wants to apologize after I take hostages. No, Carter said. He came to Private Reynolds' funeral. He apologized there before he knew about this. Let him speak. Thompson considered, then nodded. Morrison entered slowly, hands raised. Mr. Thompson, I'm responsible for what happened to your son. Not the employees you're holding. They just follow policies I created or allowed to continue. If you need someone to blame, blame me. Empty words, Thompson spat. No, I've resigned. The entire board was at the funeral today. We've committed $50 million to reforming how we handle military transports. Your son's name, David Thompson, will be part of that reform. Every employee will learn his story. What we did wrong, why it can never happen again. Thompson's gun hand was shaking now. It won't bring him back. No, Morrison agreed. Nothing will. But maybe it prevents another parent from experiencing what you did. Carter stepped forward slowly. Marcus, you've made your point. The whole country is watching. David's story will be heard. But if you hurt these people, That's all anyone will remember, not your son's service, not the dishonor he faced just this moment. Thompson looked at the hostages, seeing them clearly for the first time. One was a young woman, maybe 25, crying quietly. Another was a middle-aged man, wedding ring visible. The third was an older woman, probably close to retirement. "They didn't do anything wrong," Thompson said quietly. "They're just people doing their jobs." "Then let them go," Carter said. "Let them go, and we'll make sure David's story is told right." Thompson set the gun on the desk and stepped back. "I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted someone to care." The hostages scrambled for the door. Within seconds, the office was flooded with SWAT officers. Thompson didn't resist as they cuffed him, his eyes locked on Carter. "Tell David's story," he said. "Please." "I will," Carter promised. As Thompson was led away, Carter felt the weight of the past days crushing down on him. From a simple escort mission to a national crisis, from one soldier's journey home to a reckoning for how America treats its fallen heroes. Morrison stood beside him, looking older than his 58 years. "This isn't over, is it?" "No," Carter said. "This is bigger than one airline or one policy. This is about a disconnect between those who serve and those who profit. Until we bridge that gap, there'll be more Marcus Thompsons, more breaking points." They walked out of the terminal together into the chaos of media and emergency vehicles. Rebecca Chen from CNN was there immediately, microphone extended. "Colonel Carter, can you tell us what happened inside?" Carter looked at the camera, thinking of Jason Reynolds in his grave, of Marcus Thompson, in custody, of countless other families who'd faced dishonor in their darkest moments. A father's grief turned to rage because his son's sacrifice was dishonored. Staff Sergeant Thompson will face legal consequences for his actions today, but the real crime was committed 3 years ago, when American Airlines lost his son's body and treated it like missing luggage. We need to do better. We must do better. His phone rang. General Matthews. "Colonel, the President wants to see you. Tomorrow, 0800 Oval Office." "Sir, I need to ensure Mrs. Reynolds gets home safely first." "Bring her. The President wants to meet her too." As Carter ended the call, he noticed Melissa Peterson running toward them, laptop in hand. "Colonel, you need to see this. That flash drive, it's internal American Airlines communications about military transports going back 5 years. They knew. They've had dozens of incidents like Thompson's son. They covered them all up with NDAs and settlements." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about one incident or even two. It was systematic. Morrison had gone pale. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "But you should have," Carter said. "That's the point. You should have known." The helicopter was waiting to take them back to Detroit. As they lifted off, Carter could see the crowds below, the protest signs already appearing, the vigils being organized. The story had evolved from one soldier's journey home to a national examination of conscience. His phone buzzed with a message from Angela Reynolds. "Watch the news. You saved those people. Jason would be proud. We all are." Then another from Marcus Thompson's ex-wife. "Thank you for listening to him, for making David matter." As Cincinnati disappeared below them, Carter thought about the twists of the last few days. A routine escort mission had become a viral confrontation. A corporate mistake had become a national scandal. A CEO's resignation had become an industry-wide reckoning. A funeral had become a statement of values. And now, a hostage situation had revealed years of systematic dishonor. But the biggest twist was yet to come. As they flew toward Detroit, Lieutenant Kim called with urgent news. "Sir, something's happening. Other airlines are announcing policy changes. UPS and FedEx are offering free transport for all military remains. Delta's creating a dedicated military honor guard for every fallen soldier transport. It's like the entire industry is trying to distance themselves from American Airlines." Carter looked at Morrison, who was staring out the window at the landscape below. "You started something. Morrison said quietly. Something that needed to start. I didn't start anything, Carter replied. I just tried to complete a mission. The American people started this. They're the ones who said enough. As Detroit's skyline appeared on the horizon, Carter's phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. He answered cautiously. Colonel Carter, this is General James Madison, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I'll be brief. What you've done these past days has restored faith in why we serve. The President is considering a new position, Military Family Advocacy Director, reporting directly to the Secretary of Defense. He wants you for the job. Carter was speechless. From escorting one fallen soldier to potentially advocating for all military families, the mission had expanded beyond anything he could have imagined. I need time to think, sir. Take all the time you need, Colonel. But know this, what happened these last few days has changed things. The country is watching and they're demanding better. We need someone like you to make sure they get it. The helicopter descended toward Detroit, where Angela Reynolds was waiting, where Jason Reynolds was finally at rest, where this all started with a simple mission of honor. But Carter knew now that nothing about honor was ever simple. It required vigilance, courage, and sometimes confrontation with those who would diminish it. The sun was setting over Detroit, painting the sky in shades of red and gold that reminded Carter of the flag draped over Jason Reynolds's casket. Tomorrow, he would meet the President. Tomorrow, he would help shape policy. Tomorrow, he would continue the fight. But tonight, he would return to the funeral home, sit with Angela Reynolds, if she needed him, and complete his mission the way it should have been completed from the start, quietly, respectfully, and with the full measure of devotion that every fallen soldier deserved. The helicopter touched down, and Carter saw a crowd waiting, not media this time, but veterans, ordinary citizens and airline employees who'd risked their careers to stand for what was right. They weren't there for interviews or statements. They were there to bear witness to ensure that Jason Reynolds' story, and all the stories like his, would never be forgotten. As he stepped out of the helicopter, Carter realized the truth. This mission would never really be complete. As long as Americans served and died for their country, someone would need to stand guard over their honor. Today, that guard was him. Tomorrow, it might be someone else. But the watch would continue. The funeral home's parking lot had transformed into something resembling a forward operating base. Veterans had set up tents, volunteers distributed coffee and sandwiches, and American flags lined every pathway. Carter walked through them, acknowledging nods and salutes, but his mind was elsewhere. In 12 hours, he would stand in the Oval Office. The weight of that pressed on him like body armor he couldn't remove. Angela Reynolds sat in the funeral home's quiet room, still holding the folded flag. She looked up as Carter entered, and he saw something different in her eyes. Not just grief now, but purpose. They want to interview me, she said, gesturing at her phone. Every major network, 3 documentary producers, and someone from Netflix. They want to tell Jason's story. What do you want? Carter asked, sitting beside her. I want my son back. Her voice broke slightly. But since I can't have that, maybe I want his death to mean something more than a statistic. Before Carter could respond, Melissa Peterson burst through the door, her face flushed with urgency. Colonel, you need to see this. That flash drive, there's more on it. So much more. She opened her laptop, revealing document after document. Personnel files, internal memos, recorded phone conversations. The scale of what American Airlines had hidden was staggering. Look at this, Melissa said, clicking on a file dated 3 years ago. Marcus Thompson's son wasn't the only one lost that week. There were 4 other military remains misrouted. They created a whole protocol for managing the family's legal threat settlements, NDAs. They called it Operation Damage Control. Angela leaned forward. How many families? Over the past 5 years, at least 47 documented cases of mishandled military remains. Bodies lost, damaged caskets, remains sent to wrong destinations, each one buried with legal threats and money. Carter's phone rang. It was Derek Hoffman, his voice tight with fear. "Colonel, I just got a call. Someone claiming to be from a private security firm. They said if I testify about what I know, my family won't be safe." "Where are you now?" "FBI field office. They brought me here after someone tried to run me off the road an hour ago. Colonel, American Airlines isn't just a corporation. There's something deeper here. Military contracts worth billions, government connections. This goes higher than just corporate incompetence." The room suddenly felt smaller. Carter had assumed this was about corporate culture and misplaced priorities. But if Hoffman was right, they'd stumbled into something far more dangerous. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Colonel Rodriguez entered with two men Carter didn't recognize, one in an expensive suit, the other in casual clothes that didn't quite hide the bulge of a shoulder holster. "Colonel Carter, I'm James Winters from the State Department, and this is Agent David Park from the NSA. We need to discuss what you've uncovered." "NSA?" Carter stood slowly. "Since when does the NSA care about airline customer service?" Winters smiled without warmth. "Since that customer service involves classified military transport protocols. Some of those mishandled remains were from classified operations that officially never happened." Angela Reynolds stood up, clutching her flag tighter. "Are you saying my son was involved in something secret?" "No, ma'am," Agent Park said quickly. "Your son's mission was standard patrol, but 3 of the other cases Melissa found involve operators from units that don't officially exist. Their families were told training accidents. If this information becomes public—" "Then maybe it should," Carter interrupted. "Maybe Americans deserve to know. What, that we run black ops? Everyone knows that. But the specifics, locations, methods, allied involvement that gets people killed. Active operators. Assets in hostile territory. This isn't just about honoring the dead anymore, Colonel. It's about protecting the living." Melissa closed her laptop slowly. "So we're supposed to just forget what we found?" "Not forget," Winters said. "Redirect. Focus on the civilian cases, the regular military transports. Leave the classified ones alone. In exchange, we'll ensure full cooperation from American Airlines and every other carrier. Complete reform, no interference." Carter felt the familiar sensation of being maneuvered, the same feeling he'd had in Iraq when intelligence officers appeared with orders that made no tactical sense but came from too high up to question. His phone buzzed with a message from General Matthews. "Whatever they're offering, take it. This is from the very top." But before Carter could respond, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red. Through the window, Carter could see the parking lot lights were still on. Only the funeral home had lost power. "Everyone down," Agent Park commanded, drawing his weapon. Gunfire erupted outside, automatic weapons, professional 3-round bursts. The veterans in the parking lot were scrambling for cover, some retrieving weapons from their vehicles. "They're coming for the laptop," Winters said, pulling his own weapon. "The information on that drive threatens operations worth billions." Carter grabbed Angela, pulling her behind a heavy desk. "Rodriguez, get her out the back." "No," Angela said firmly. "I'm not leaving. They want to silence my son's story. They'll have to go through me." The front door exploded inward. 4 figures in tactical gear entered, weapons raised, but they hadn't counted on the room being full of combat veterans. Rodriguez had already flanked them, his own concealed weapon drawn. Carter, unarmed, grabbed a heavy lamp. "Drop the weapons," the lead figure commanded through a voice modulator. "We're here for the computer. No one has to get hurt." "You already hurt people when you fired into a crowd of veterans," Carter replied, moving to put himself between the gunman and Angela. "Some of those men and women served multiple tours. You think they're going to let you walk in here?" Through the window, he could see the veterans organizing, using cars as cover, coordinating like the soldiers they'd once been. Several had retrieved rifles from their vehicles, legal weapons they'd brought to fire honorary volleys that now served a different purpose. "This doesn't concern them," the tactical team leader said. "Or you, Colonel, walk away." From what another cover-up? Another case of profit over principle? Carter laughed bitterly. You obviously haven't been paying attention to what's happened the last few days. The sound of sirens approached many sirens. Someone had called in every unit in Detroit. But more importantly, Carter heard helicopters. Military helicopters. You've got about 30 seconds before this place is surrounded by actual soldiers. Rodriguez set his weapon steady. Not contractors, not mercenaries. The 101st Airborne who've been on standby since the funeral. You want to fight the United States Army on American soil. The tactical team leader hesitated. Through his earpiece, Carter could hear frantic chatter. Someone was ordering them to abort. The laptop, the leader said finally. Just give us the laptop, and we leave. Melissa clutched it tighter. This contains evidence of things that will get people killed if released improperly. Winters interrupted. Please, there's a right way to handle this. Angela Reynolds stepped out from behind the desk, still holding her flag. She walked straight up to the tactical team leader, a small woman facing an armed giant. My son died in Afghanistan, 19 years old. He saved 2 of his squad mates. That's his story, and it's clean and honorable and true. But how many other stories aren't? How many families were lied to? How many mothers are holding flags for children who died in operations that never happened? She reached for the leader's weapon, gently pushing it down. He let her, seemingly hypnotized by her grief-filled dignity. You want the laptop, take it. But know that every secret you keep, every lie you preserve, dishonors not just my son, but every soldier who died believing they were fighting for truth. The parking lot erupted with light as military helicopters descended, searchlights blazing. Through the broken door, Carter could see soldiers fast roping down, establishing a perimeter. The tactical team was trapped. The leader's radio crackled. Abort! 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 But it was too late. Soldiers flooded the building, weapons raised. The tactical team dropped their weapons, hands up. It was over in seconds. General Rodriguez himself walked through the door, stars gleaming on his shoulders. Gentlemen, you're under arrest for assault on federal property and attempted theft of classified materials. He looked at the NSA agent. Agent Park, these men aren't yours, are they? Park shook his head. No, sir. We suspect private military contractors working for people who profit from the current system, Rodriguez finished. Colonel Carter, the president, has been briefed. He's moved your meeting to tonight. He wants answers before this gets worse. Carter looked at his watch. 8:47 p.m. Tonight. Marine 1 is outside. You, Mrs. Reynolds, and anyone else with direct knowledge of this situation. The president wants to hear it all. As they prepared to leave, Melissa handed the laptop to Agent Park. I made copies, she said quietly. Insurance. If anything happens to any of us, it all goes public. Park nodded slowly. Smart. Keep those copies safe. The flight to Washington took 2 hours. Marine 1 flew through darkness. Angela Reynolds staring out at the lights below. Carter sat beside her, wondering how a simple escort mission had led to the White House Situation Room. Colonel, Angela said quietly, do you think Jason knew about all of this? The secrets, the lies? No, Carter said firmly. Your son was a good soldier doing honest work. Whatever else is happening, it doesn't touch his honor. The White House appeared below them, lit up like a beacon. As they descended toward the south lawn, Carter saw figures waiting, Secret Service military officers, and at the center, President William Harrison himself. They were escorted directly to the Situation Room, where a gathering unlike any Carter had seen was assembled. The Joint Chiefs, the directors of CIA and NSA, the Secretary of Defense, and several people he didn't recognize, but whose bearing suggested intelligence community. The president entered last, his face grim. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a crisis. What started as a single airline's mistake has exposed vulnerabilities in our entire military transport system. More concerning, it's revealed that private contractors have been profiting from these vulnerabilities. Colonel Carter, tell us everything. Carter began with the airport confrontation, but the president stopped him. We know that part. Tell us about tonight. About the armed team that tried to steal classified information from a funeral home. As Carter recounted the events, he watched faces around the table grow increasingly concerned. When he finished, the CIA director spoke first. Mr. President, those contractors weren't rogue. They were hired by a consortium of defense contractors who have billion-dollar deals with commercial airlines for military transport. If the system is reformed, if military transport is brought fully in-house, they lose those contracts. Are you telling me, the president said slowly, that American companies hired mercenaries to suppress information about mishandled military remains? It's worse than that, the NSA director added. We've identified communications suggesting they knew about the mishandling and saw it as leverage. Families who complained too loudly were investigated, pressured, sometimes threatened. Angela Reynolds had been silent, but now she spoke. Mr. President, how many? I'm sorry. How many families were threatened? How many were silenced? How many never got to bury their children with dignity because someone was protecting a contract? The president looked at his advisors, then back at Angela. We're still determining the full scope, but preliminary numbers suggest hundreds over the last decade. The room fell silent. Hundreds of families, hundreds of soldiers dishonored for profit. The Secretary of Defense cleared his throat. Mr. President, we need to act decisively. If this becomes public without our controlling the narrative, it should become public, Carter interrupted. These families deserve the truth. The truth could compromise ongoing operations, the CIA director argued. Some of these soldiers were involved in... Then separate the classified from the standard, Angela said. Tell the truth where you can. Acknowledge the cover-up. Take responsibility. The president studied her for a long moment. Mrs. Reynolds, would you be willing to stand with me at a press conference? Your voice, your loss. It would help America understand. Only if Colonel Carter stands with us. He started this. He should be there when it ends. The president nodded, then turned to his chiefs. Effective immediately, all military remains transport is handled exclusively by the military. No more contractors, no more commercial carriers unless absolutely necessary, and then only under military supervision. Draft the executive order tonight. Sir, the Secretary of State interjected. The airline lobby can explain to the American people why they prioritized profits over patriots. Colonel Carter, I'm appointing you as Special Advisor for Military Family Affairs, reporting directly to me. Your first task is full investigation and reform of this system. Carter felt the weight of the appointment, but also its necessity. Sir, what about the contractors who attacked the funeral home? They're being interrogated now. We'll have names within hours. But Carter, this is bigger than just them. There's an entire shadow industry profiting from military logistics using our honored dead as leverage. We're going to dismantle it. A aide entered whispering urgently to the president. His face darkened. It seems American Airlines board has been busy. They're filing an injunction to prevent the executive order claiming government overreach. Let them, Angela said quietly. Let them go to court and argue they have the right to mishandle military remains. See how that plays before a jury of Americans. The meeting continued past midnight, plans being made, orders drafted. When they finally emerged, Carter found himself standing on the White House lawn with Angela Reynolds, both of them looking up at the stars. Your son would be proud, he told her. What happened to him started something that will protect every military family going forward. I hope so, she replied. But Colonel, you know this isn't over. Those contractors, those companies, they have too much to lose. They'll fight back. As if to underscore her words, Carter's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You've made powerful enemies, Colonel. Back off or face consequences. He showed it to the Secret Service agent assigned to him, who immediately began making calls. But Carter knew Angela was right. The fight was far from over. They were driven to a secure hotel protection details assigned. As Carter finally lay down to rest at 3 a.m., his phone rang one more time. It was Marcus Thompson calling from federal custody. "Colonel, I saw the news. What you're doing, it matters. My son, your soldier, all of them. Maybe now they'll get the respect they deserve." "Marcus, your actions today were wrong. I know. I'll face the consequences. But Colonel, I'm not the only one who's been pushed to the edge by this. There are support groups, online forums, thousands of us who've been dishonored and silenced. We're ready to speak up if someone will listen." Carter sat up. "Give me the names of these groups. The president needs to hear from all of you." As Marcus provided information, Carter realized the scope of what they'd uncovered. This wasn't just about American Airlines, or even the transport companies. It was about a systematic devaluation of military sacrifice in favor of corporate profit. The next morning came too quickly. At 7 a.m., Carter stood in the White House press room beside President Harrison and Angela Reynolds. The room was packed, every major outlet present. The president spoke first, outlining the executive order acknowledging the failures promising reform. Then, Angela spoke, her voice carrying the weight of every Gold Star mother. "My son died believing in something greater than himself. The least we can do is ensure he and others like him are treated with dignity in death. No mother should have to fight to bring her child home." When Carter's turn came, he spoke not as a soldier, but as a witness. "I've seen combat. I've lost men under my command. But nothing prepared me for the battle I've faced the last 4 days. The battle against indifference, against corporate callousness, against those who see our fallen heroes as cargo. That battle ends today." The questions came fast and fierce. Reporters wanted details, names, accountability. The president answered what he could: promised investigations committed to transparency. But Carter could see the doubt in some eyes. Washington had promised reform before. As they left the podium, an aide rushed up to the president. "Sir, we have a problem. 3 more airline companies just filed joint litigation. They're claiming the executive order will cost them billions, that the government is breaching existing contracts." "Let them sue," the president replied. "And while they're at it, let them explain their own handling of military remains. Open every file, audit every transport. If they want a fight, they'll get one." But the real bombshell came an hour later. Derek Hoffman, who'd been in protective custody, had gone missing. His FBI handlers found his safe house, empty, signs of a struggle, blood on the floor. Carter received the call while still at the White House. Colonel Hoffman had more information, things he hadn't shared yet. "If they have him..." "They're trying to silence witnesses," Carter said. "Mr. President, we need to find him. He risked everything to expose this." The president turned to his security team. "Find him. Use every resource. And Colonel Carter, I'm assigning you a full protective detail. If they took Hoffman, you could be next." As Carter was escorted to a secure vehicle, his phone rang. It was Hoffman's number, but the voice wasn't his. "Colonel Carter, we have your witness. He had some interesting things to say about military transport contracts, black budget operations, congressional bribes, things that could embarrass a lot of powerful people." "What do you want?" "Stop. Just stop. Take your appointment. Make some token reforms, but stop digging into the deeper connections. Do that, and Hoffman goes free. And if I don't, then he becomes another casualty of corporate warfare. And Colonel, he won't be the last. That funeral home full of veterans, that airline employee who helped you, that Gold Star mother standing beside you. Accidents happen." The threat was clear. This had escalated beyond corporate misconduct to something approaching organized crime. "You just threatened military families on a recorded line," Carter said. "You know that's a federal crime." The laugh was cold. "Prove it. The number's already burned. The location's masked. We're professionals, Colonel. Question is, Are you willing to risk civilian lives for your crusade? The line went dead. Carter immediately reported the call, but he knew they were right. Professional criminals probably hired through multiple cutouts paid in cryptocurrency, impossible to trace quickly. As his convoy pulled away from the White House, Carter saw protesters gathering. But these weren't protesters against the government. They were veterans and military families holding signs supporting reform, demanding justice for their fallen. Marcus Thompson's network had mobilized. The secure phone rang. It was the president himself. "Colonel, I've just signed a classified finding. We're treating this as a national security threat. Full resources authorized. These people just made a fatal mistake. They threatened American military families. Find Hoffman. End this." Through the bulletproof windows, Carter watched Washington pass by. Somewhere in this city, powerful people were meeting, planning, trying to protect their profits. But they'd miscalculated. They'd turned a simple mission of honor into a national cause. They'd threatened the wrong people. And now, with the full weight of the government behind him, Carter was going to finish what had started at an airline gate 5 days ago. His phone buzzed with a message from Angela Reynolds. "They called me too. Threatened me. I told them my son faced worse in Afghanistan. We don't back down, Colonel. We never back down." The FBI command center in Washington, D.C., hummed with controlled chaos as Carter entered at 4:23 p.m. Every screen showed different feeds. Traffic cameras, satellite imagery, cell tower data, all searching for Derek Hoffman. Special Agent Diana Foster, who'd first approached Carter at the cemetery, was coordinating the search. "Colonel, we've tracked the van that took Hoffman to a warehouse district in Baltimore," she said without preamble. But here's what's interesting. The property is owned by a shell company that traces back to Sentinel Defense Logistics. Carter recognized the name. They held contracts worth billions, not just for military transport, but for supply chains across multiple agencies. They're bigger than just airline contracts. "Much bigger," Foster confirmed. "And their CEO, Richard Blackstone, has connections throughout defense and state. He golfs with senators, hunts with generals. This is why they felt confident enough to threaten you." A younger agent rushed over with a tablet. "We intercepted a communication. They're moving Hoffman in 2 hours. If we're going to act, we go now," Carter decided. "But if this is Blackstone, he'll have lawyers ready before we even arrive." Foster smiled grimly. "That's why we're not arresting anyone yet. This is a rescue operation. Hoffman is a kidnapping victim and we have exigent circumstances." As they prepared to move, Carter's secure phone rang. It was Melissa Peterson. Her voice panicked. "Colonel, they're at my apartment. I barricaded myself in the bathroom, but—" The sound of splintering wood came through the phone, followed by Melissa's scream, then nothing. "Foster? They're taking out witnesses," Carter said urgently. Melissa Peterson, the gate agent. Foster was already on her radio dispatching units to Melissa's location. But Carter knew they'd be too late. These people were eliminating everyone who could testify about what really happened. The convoy of black SUVs raced toward Baltimore, sirens silent to maintain surprise. During the drive, Carter received a call from an unexpected source, Morrison, the former American Airlines CEO. "Colonel, I've been doing my own investigation. Blackstone approached me 3 years ago about a partnership. Military remains would be deliberately mishandled to create leverage over families. If they complained, Blackstone's people would offer resolution services, essentially hush money with threats. I refused, but others didn't." "Which others?" "Transglobal Cargo, Infinity Logistics, at least 4 major carriers. They're all in on it, Carter. Billions in government contracts maintained through deliberate abuse of military families." Carter felt sick. This wasn't incompetence or indifference. It was orchestrated cruelty for profit. They reached the Baltimore warehouse as dusk fell. Tactical teams were already in position, thermal imaging showing 12 heat signatures inside one stationary likely Hoffman. "We go in hard and fast," Foster commanded. "Colonel, you're not tactical anymore, so—" "I'm going in," Carter interrupted. "Hoffman trusted me. If he's traumatized, he needs to see a familiar face. Foster started to object, then nodded. Stay behind the entry team. The assault was swift. Flashbang grenades shattered the darkness, tactical teams flowing through breached doors like water through a dam. Carter followed his muscle memory from Iraq, returning unbidden. They found Hoffman tied to a chair, bloodied but alive. Two men in suits were destroying documents in industrial shredders, trying to eliminate evidence, even as FBI agents screamed at them to stop. Colonel, Hoffman's voice was weak. They wanted me to recant, to say I lied about everything. When I refused, he gestured at his battered face. As medics tended to Hoffman, Foster's team secured the documents that hadn't been destroyed. One of the captured men, younger than the others, and clearly terrified, broke immediately. I'm just an accountant, he babbled. I just moved money. Blackstone said it was legal, that we were protecting corporate interests. I didn't know about the threats, the violence. Where's Blackstone now? Foster demanded. His plane. He's leaving for the Caymans in an hour. He said if things went bad, he'd run the operation from offshore. Carter grabbed Foster's arm. We can't let him leave. He's the key to all of this. We don't have enough for an arrest warrant yet, Foster replied. A judge would need... Carter's phone rang. It was the president. Colonel, I'm watching the situation. Blackstone's plane... Yes, sir. He's running. No, he's not. The president's voice was steel. I'm grounding all private aircraft, citing national security. He can sit on that tarmac until we have what we need. As Foster coordinated with air traffic control, Carter noticed something in the recovered documents, a list of names, all military families who'd complained about mishandled remains. Beside each name were notes: leveraged, silenced, pending action. Angela Reynolds's name had been added just yesterday. His phone buzzed with a text from Angela herself. 3 men just tried to enter my hotel room. Security stopped them, but Colonel, they had guns. The entire protection network was activating, trying to eliminate witnesses before they could testify, but they'd underestimated the response. The president had mobilized resources usually reserved for terrorism cases. Colonel, one of Foster's agents called out, "We found something. There's a whole server room here. Financial records, communications, everything." They'd hit the jackpot. But even as technical specialists began extracting data, Foster's phone rang with bad news. Blackstone's lawyers just got an emergency injunction. A federal judge in Delaware, one of Blackstone's hunting buddies, ruled we can't access the server data without a specific warrant. They're judge shopping, Carter said in disgust. It gets worse. They're claiming the warehouse raid was illegal, that Hoffman wasn't kidnapped, but was there voluntarily for a business meeting. Carter looked at Hoffman, who despite his injuries managed a bitter laugh. Voluntary. They grabbed me off the street, threw a bag over my head. How is that voluntary? But Carter knew how this game was played. High-powered lawyers could twist anything, delay everything until evidence disappeared and witnesses recanted or vanished. His phone rang again. This time it was General Matthews from the Pentagon. Colonel, we just discovered something. 3 of the soldiers whose remains were mishandled were from Delta Force. Their missions are beyond classified. If Blackstone has information about them, he's not just running a criminal enterprise, Carter finished. He's a national security threat. That changed everything. National security meant different rules, different courts, different authorities. The president could act unilaterally. Within minutes, the Delaware judge's injunction was overruled by the FISA court. FBI technicians swarmed the server room, while Blackstone sat in his grounded plane, probably watching his empire crumble through his window. The data they recovered was damning. Emails explicitly discussing the leverage program, financial records showing payments to threatened families, even recordings of Blackstone himself saying, "These Gold Star families are gold mines. They're vulnerable, emotional, and desperate for closure. We give them someone to blame the airlines, then offer to fix it for a price." But the biggest shock came when they found communications with active-duty military officers. 3 generals and 7 colonels were receiving payments from Blackstone's company, ensuring military transport contracts stayed within the network. My God, Foster breathed. This is systemic corruption at the highest levels. Carter thought of all the families who'd been victimized, all the soldiers whose final journeys home had been deliberately sabotaged for profit. Rage built in his chest, the kind that had once made him a formidable combat leader. His phone rang. It was Rebecca Chen from CNN. "Colonel, we just received a data dump. Someone sent us everything: emails, recordings, financial documents. It's all about the military transport scandal. We're going live in 10 minutes. Carter looked at Foster, who was already getting similar calls from other agents. Someone inside Blackstone's organization had gone rogue, releasing everything to the media. "Find out who," Foster commanded her team. The answer came from an unexpected source. Carter's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Catherine Blackstone, Richard's wife. I just sent everything to the media. 23 years of marriage, and I just learned my husband built his fortune on the bodies of dead soldiers. There are some lines you don't cross." The media explosion was immediate and devastating. Every major outlet led with the story. Cable news showed graphics of money flowing from grieving families to corporate accounts. Social media erupted with hashtags like #StolenHonor and #Blackstone's Betrayal. But Blackstone wasn't finished. From his grounded plane, he made a desperate call that was intercepted by the FBI. "Release package Omega," he said to someone. "If I'm going down, they all go down with me." Within minutes, classified documents began appearing on WikiLeaks. Detailed information about Black Ops missions, the real circumstances of deaths that had been officially listed as training accidents, even the identities of active operators still in the field. The Situation Room at the White House went into crisis mode. Carter was immediately recalled to Washington, racing back as the scandal evolved from corporate corruption to national security catastrophe. He arrived to find the president in the Situation Room with the entire National Security Council. On the screens were news reports from around the world. Al Jazeera was running names of Delta Force operators. Russian media was analyzing secret missions in Syria. Chinese state television was exposing CIA operations in Asia. "Blackstone just committed treason," the president said quietly. "He's endangered every American operative globally." "Sir," the CIA director interjected, "we need to extract 17 operators immediately. Their covers are blown." "Do it," the president ordered, then turned to Carter. "Colonel, this started with you trying to bring one soldier home. Look where we are now." "With respect, sir, this was always there. I just lifted the rock." The Secretary of Defense stood up. "We've identified the military officers involved in Blackstone's network. Arrests are happening now. But Colonel, some of these men are heroes, decorated veterans who somehow lost their way." Carter thought of his own journey, how easily honor could be compromised by small decisions that accumulated into grave sins. They betrayed their oaths for money. Hero or not, they faced justice. An aide rushed in with urgent news. "Mr. President, Blackstone's trying to take off. His pilot is ignoring the ground stop." "Scramble fighters," the president ordered without hesitation. "Force him down if necessary." On the main screen, they watched radar tracks as 2 F-16s intercepted Blackstone's Gulfstream, forcing it to return to the airport. This time, federal agents boarded, immediately arresting everyone aboard. But even as Blackstone was taken into custody, the damage continued to spread. Melissa Peterson had been found alive but severely beaten with a message carved into her apartment wall. "This is what happens to those who talk." Carter felt personally responsible. These people had stood up because of his example, and now they were paying the price. "I need to see Melissa," he told Foster. "She's at Georgetown Hospital under guard. But Colonel, there's something else." Foster pulled up security footage on her tablet. "The men who attacked her, we've identified them. They're active duty. Special forces. They're part of a unit that officially doesn't exist." The implications were staggering. Elements within the military itself were involved in silencing witnesses. "Are you telling me," Carter said slowly, "that American special operators are attacking American citizens on American soil?" "It appears so. And Colonel, if they're willing to do this, you're definitely a target." As if to emphasize her point, Carter's protection detail suddenly went to high alert. One of them pressed his earpiece, then turned to Carter. "Sir, we've detected a sniper laser painting this room. We need to move. Now." They evacuated the building in a controlled rush, Carter surrounded by agents as they moved to an armored vehicle. Behind them, a window shattered where Carter had been standing moments before. The shot had come from over 800 yards away, professional work. Whoever wanted him dead had access to military-grade resources and personnel. In the armored vehicle, Carter received a call from Angela Reynolds. "Colonel, I'm at the hospital with Melissa. She's conscious. She wants to talk to you." When Carter arrived at Georgetown Hospital, he found it transformed into a fortress. FBI Secret Service, and now military police, had established multiple perimeters. Whatever was happening had triggered responses at the highest levels. Melissa lay in her hospital bed, face swollen, arm in a cast, but her eyes were fierce when she saw Carter. "They wanted me to recant," she said through split lips. "To say you manipulated me, that I lied about what happened at the airport. When I refused, they said they'd kill my daughter." Carter felt his blood freeze. "You have a daughter. Emma. She's 7. She's with my mother in Ohio. I've begged them to get FBI protection, but—" Carter was already on his phone to Foster. "We need protection on Melissa Peterson's family immediately. Full detail." As Foster coordinated protection, the hospital room's television showed breaking news. Blackstone, in federal custody, had suffered what authorities were calling a medical emergency. He was dead, apparent heart attack, though Carter suspected something more sinister. "Dead men don't testify," Foster said grimly when she arrived. Someone wanted him silent. The conspiracy was unraveling, but its architects were covering their tracks with bodies. How many more would die before this ended? Carter's phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. Against Foster's advice, he answered. "Colonel Carter," the voice was electronically distorted. "You've caused enough damage. Blackstone was a fool, but he was just middle management. You have no idea how deep this goes, how many people profit from the system you're trying to destroy." "Then enlighten me." "Every war needs logistics. Every body needs transport. Every family needs closure. We provide all three for a price. It's capitalism, Colonel. Supply and demand. You're profiting from grief and dishonor. We're profiting from inefficiency. The military can't handle its own logistics, so we step in. The families can't navigate bureaucracy, so we facilitate. Everyone wins. Except the families who are threatened, the soldiers who are dishonored. Acceptable losses, just like in war. The voice paused. Here's our offer, Colonel. Stop now and the violence ends. Continue and we'll eliminate everyone who helped you one by one, starting with the Reynolds woman. You threaten her again. We don't threaten, Colonel. We execute. Ask Blackstone. The line went dead. Carter immediately called the protection detail on Angela Reynolds, but the lead agent assured him she was secure in a safe house. Still, Carter couldn't shake the feeling that they were always one step behind. These people had resources, reach, and the willingness to kill. How did you fight an enemy that hid in shadows while wearing the uniform of allies? The answer came from an unexpected source. General Rodriguez arrived at the hospital with a contingent of military intelligence officers. Colonel, we've identified the rogue operators. They're part of a unit that was supposedly disbanded 3 years ago after a scandal in Syria. But they never really shut down. They went private, selling their services to the highest bidder. Blackstone, among others. But here's the thing, we know where they are. They're holed up in a compound in Virginia, probably planning their next move. Carter saw the opportunity immediately. We take them down, we cut off the muscle. It's not that simple. They're American citizens, technically. We can't just send in the military. But we can send in FBI HRT, Foster interrupted. With military advisors. Colonel Carter, for instance. The raid was planned for dawn, but at 2 a.m., everything changed. Carter was woken by urgent knocking. Angela Reynolds stood in his hotel doorway, still in her pajamas, face pale with shock. "They took her," she gasped. "They took Emma, Melissa's daughter." Left a note saying she'll be returned when everyone stops talking. The unthinkable had happened. They'd kidnapped a 7-year-old child. Carter felt rage like he hadn't experienced since losing soldiers in combat. But this was worse. This was a child innocent of everything except having a brave mother. "We find her," he told Angela. "We find her and we end this. All of it." The president himself called within minutes. "Colonel, I'm declaring this a terrorist incident. Full authorities activated. Find that child and bring me the heads of everyone involved." The command center exploded into activity. Every agency, every resource, every asset was mobilized. The kidnapping of Emma Peterson had crossed a final line. NSA activated every surveillance tool, legal or otherwise. CIA recalled assets from around the globe. FBI pulled agents from every field office. And the military quietly prepared for something that hadn't happened on American soil in generations, a full combat operation against enemies within. As dawn approached, Carter stood in the command center, watching dozens of screens showing the search for one little girl. Melissa Peterson was sedated, her injuries and terror too much to bear consciously. Angela Reynolds sat beside her, holding her hand, two mothers united by loss and fear. "We'll find her," Carter promised them. "And when we do, everyone responsible pays." Foster approached with a tablet. "Colonel, we got a hit. Cell tower data shows the team that took Emma heading toward the Virginia compound. She's there." Carter looked at the assembled tactical teams, federal agents and military operators working together in ways that bureaucracy usually prevented. But bureaucracy had died when they took a child. "We go in hard," Carter said. "No negotiations, no delays. We get Emma, and we end this network permanently." As helicopters spun up and assault teams performed final checks, Carter thought about how this had all started standing at an airline gate, trying to bring a fallen soldier home. Now he was about to lead an assault on American soil against American traitors who'd built an empire on the bodies of heroes. The flight to Virginia took 20 minutes. 20 minutes during which Emma Peterson was in the hands of killers. 20 minutes that felt like hours. As the compound appeared below a sprawling complex that had once been a CIA training facility, Carter saw heat signatures through thermal imaging, 32 adults, and one small figure, locked in what appeared to be a basement room. "Emma's in the basement southwest corner," the tactical commander reported. "Multiple hostiles throughout the structure." Carter checked his borrowed tactical gear, feeling the familiar weight of body armor and weapons. He wasn't supposed to be on the entry team, he was supposed to observe, advise. But everyone knew he'd be first through the door if it meant saving that child. "Remember?" Foster said over the radio. "These are trained operators. They'll fight hard, but we fight harder." The helicopters descended fast, ropes deployed operators, sliding down into hostile territory. The compound erupted in gunfire immediately. The defenders had been waiting. But they hadn't expected the fury of the response. FBI, HRT, Delta Force advisors, and SEAL team observers worked in perfect synchronization clearing rooms with lethal efficiency. Carter moved with them, muscle memory from Iraq guiding him through familiar patterns of violence. They reached the basement door, locked and reinforced. Breaching charges were placed, and in the seconds before detonation, Carter heard something that chilled his soul, a child crying. The door exploded inward. Carter was first through, weapon raised, scanning for threats. Two men with weapons spun toward him. His training took over, controlled pairs, center mass. Both fell. In the corner, huddled in a cage barely big enough for a dog, was Emma Peterson. 7 years old, still in her frozen pajamas, tears streaming down her face. "Emma," Carter said, gently lowering his weapon. "Your mom sent me. You're safe now." As medics rushed in to extract the child, the radio crackled with reports. The compound was secure, 15 enemy dead, 12 captured. Among the captured was someone unexpected: General Patricia Hawkins, one of the Pentagon's rising stars, who'd been secretly running the military side of Blackstone's operation. The revelation sent shockwaves through Washington. Hawkins had been trusted with some of the military's most sensitive operations. Her betrayal wasn't just criminal, it was a fundamental breach of everything the uniform represented. As Emma was reunited with her mother, both of them crying, Carter stood outside watching helicopters carry away prisoners who'd once worn the same uniform he did. They'd sworn the same oaths, served in the same wars, then sold their honor for money. His phone rang. It was the president. "Colonel, you did it. Emma's safe, the network is broken. Come back to Washington. We have decisions to make about what comes next." But even as Carter boarded the helicopter back to D.C., he knew this wasn't over. The people captured were middle management, just like Blackstone. Somewhere, the real architects of this system were watching, calculating, preparing their next move. The war for honor had been won, but the battle against those who would profit from sacrifice continued. And Colonel David Carter, who'd started this journey, simply trying to bring one soldier home, had become the point of the spear in a fight that would define how America treated its heroes for generations to come. As Washington appeared on the horizon, Carter thought of Jason Reynolds lying in his grave in Detroit. One young soldier's death had exposed a cancer in the system, had sparked a revolution in how America honored its fallen. "Rest easy, Private Reynolds," Carter whispered. "Your mission is complete." But Carter's mission, he knew, had just begun.